gentlemen, welcome on into a weekend episode of Fantasy Daily. Joining you here, August 6th, almost there. What do we got? Less than 20 days left until football really feels like it's back because we're drafting. We got our lineups we're able to send. We're ready to start talking about week one in less than 20 days. I am very excited. We are back, and you can hear me saying we because we got my man John Landry back in the house, the lead analyst over here at Fantasy Daily. I, as always, am your host, Nathan Passwell. Very excited to be back here with you. Very excited to have John back. He missed a couple shows, the quarterback and tight end shows, but we're going to give him the floor here real soon. We got the mock draft episode tonight. So talking all week about the draft or pass series, the quarterbacks, all the way down to the tight ends. So we're going to finally put us to the test. We're going to put ourselves on the spot and on the clock in front of you, showing us in live settings with me drafting at the 2 position, John drafting at the 11 position. So kind of both ends of the draft, you get to see kind of our strategies here. And everything that we talked about during the week, you get to see it live in action today. So we are going to be doing the mock draft episode. But before we do, we're going to give John the floor so he can talk about his quarterbacks and tight ends. But John, as always, thank you so much for being with us. And how's it feel to be back before you start talking about your quarterbacks and tight ends, man?
It's nice to be let out of the stat dungeon every now and then. I've blasted up into the stratosphere, so it's nice to be out, catching some fresh air, eating some food, so it's good to be back.
And that's exactly it. We every now and then we let John out because that's what he does. He just lives in that stats dungeon, what he likes to call the stratosphere there. And every now and then we let him up for the air. But we need him to get the stats before football season really kicks off, before it really gets going. So John, appreciate your patience there. Appreciate the minimal amounts of water that you can suck out of the cracks of the concrete that are in that dungeon. So he's living off that, but he's getting the real good data that we need. We need to, that's how you create diamonds, man. That's what we're doing. We're creating diamonds here. So John Landry, thank you so much for being with us, and we are excited to get into this mock draft episode. But before we do, like I said, we really want to hear those points about quarterback and tight end because, we went over a lot of it. But for me to say something like, I love Matt Ryan, I love Mike Joseki, certain different parts of, that landscape, John's got opinions too. So he might be able to talk me off a ledge about a different player or prop me up on a different player that I was low on, or maybe one of you like his points as well. So John, go ahead and talk about your quarterback and tight end points that you didn't get a chance to this week.
So I'm going to try to fly through this because I'm real excited to get to the mock draft. So I won't have to bring up a lot of points because you already made a lot of points that I would state. I'll just try to give what I think is a good synopsis of these players. So starting off, Josh Allen, QB1, excellent fantasy pick. Going in the middle of the first round, I'm going to pass for him. If you wait a round or two, you can get a quarterback. Scores maybe only 20 points, 30 points less than the whole season. So pass on Josh Allen. Kyler Murray going in, I believe, 5th round, 6th round. Had a pretty good season, missed a couple games. I crunched some numbers. If he were to play the 17 game season at his pace, he would have finished QB2. So going 5th, 6th round compared to Josh Allen, that's a draft for me. Next up is Aaron Rodgers. I don't think anybody needs to say anything about Aaron Rodgers. He lost his Hall of Fame receiver. He's got Dillon and Jones who are going to absorb probably most of the workload. Got Lazard. Hard pass on Aaron Rodgers. I'd be surprised if anybody drafts him this year. Next up, Trey Lance. I've heard a lot of mixed things about Trey Lance. Nathan was a big draft on that. I'm a big pass on that. I haven't seen enough of him. I know he's got a lot of hype about it. But every season you get a lot of rookies or a lot of young players that get hype and they don't pan out. So with the 22nd hardest schedule for a team that likes to run a lot, it's a pass for me. I mean, he's got great options, but I'm not going for it. And next up is Derek Carr. I like Derek Carr this year. I think he's going, let's see, ADP 114, so he's going right before the 10th round. He got the Hall of Famer Devontae Adams. He's got Darren Waller. He's got Hunter Renfrow. He's got Josh Jacobs. And I think Derek Carr is going to have a stellar season. So going round 10, I think he's worth drafting. Last up, Matt Ryan. I've always been a fan of Matt Ryan. He's been on my dynasty team for a few years. Had to drop him last year for Derek Carr, so I'm glad he's on my team. But Matt Ryan, 146 off the draft board, so he's 12th round. Absolute steal. He's got a good old line now. He's got a solid running back, great offensive pieces. Going in the 12th round, I think he's a steal. So definitely drafted Matt Ryan. Let's move on to some tight ends. Starting off with the obvious tight end, Travis Kelsey. Hard to make it out of the first round. If he makes it in the second round, that's a pretty big thing. Drafting, I would never say pass on Kelsey because he's a positional advantage. But it's at your own risk because if you draft Kelsey the first or second round, you are going to be weak somewhere, whether it's a running back or a wide receiver. I know Nathan was saying it's a commodity. It's not a commodity. It's a rarity to have a good tight end. So draft Kelsey at your own risk. Next up, Kyle Pitts. I'm a fan of Kyle Pitts. He's got a lot of talent. I think he's going mid-third round. About mid-third round. It's a little too high for me. His offense is not good. I had him last year on my Dynasty's team. Still has him. He felt like he put up numbers sometimes, but not. He wasn't good enough because he didn't have the tight end, the touchdowns. Only one touchdown. You don't want that from a monster like Kyle Pitts. But I'm going to have to pass. It's too high of a capital for Kyle Pitts. Next up, George Kittle. Immediately pass on George Kittle. He's excellent talent. He can have boomer bust games, which is not really something you want to count on. You want consistency. But the real reason I'm passing on Kittle is his injury history. Over the course of 3 or 4 seasons, not including his college, 3 or 4 seasons, he's had shoulder separation, knee sprain, hamstring issues, another knee sprain, foot fracture, strain on his calf, knee strain. That's too much. And it's not even like it's the same injury, it's always new injuries. So I'm not taking a chance with a new injury again this year. Next up is Dalton Schultz. He was tight end number 3 last year, going at the 62nd overall. That's a pretty good draft for Dalton Schultz. If he repeats like he did last year, especially with losing Amari Cooper, James Washington out for a little while, he's going to be a good pick in the 5th round, in my opinion. Next up, Zach Gertz. To me, arguably the greatest value of this draft. He's going at 98, so 9th round-ish, I think, 8th round. Little quick math, don't feel like doing it. He was on Philadelphia beginning of the season. At that game, at a 17-game pace when he was on Philly, he would have been 87 targets, 51 receptions, 535 yards, maybe a touchdown. That's debatable. But once he got traded to the Cardinals, that's when he started to shine. Had a couple slow games, had one game when he only had 2 targets, but that's because Murray only threw 15 times. But at a 17-game pace, once he made it to the Cardinals, he would have had 125 targets, 86 receptions, 887 yards, and about 5 touchdowns. So going in the 9th round, that's a draft for me. Last up, Mike Joseki. He's going 112, so that's about the 9th round, early 9th round. For me, I'm going to pass on Mike Joseki. First half of the year, he had good numbers, but in the second half of the year, he had sour numbers. He had a good game sprinkled every now and then, but he wasn't putting up numbers we would want for a tight end. Now that they have Tyreek Hill there, Jalen Waddle setting a rookie reception, I believe, for receptions, I'm going to pass on Mike Joseki. Reports out of camp is he's been blocking more, so at his ADP of early 10th round, early 9th, or late 9th round, I'm going to pass on Mike G. And I think that's it for tight ends. I know you brought up Hunter Henry. Hunter Henry's a boomer bust. I'm not going to draft him. We don't draft Patriot players here.
Absolutely, yeah. Never ever wanted me to get a Patriot player on my team. If I have a Patriot player on my team, something went wrong in the draft. But I also want to throw in something that me and John talked about briefly that, John, you may have grazed over while you were trying to speed run through that. But when we were talking personally, you also brought up the fact that with Zach Ertz and DeAndre Hopkins not being there for the first half of the season, that Zach Ertz might have a great beginning of the season, especially start building that rapport with Kyler Murray. They paid him to be the guy. He's got the revitalization kind of thing going on over there. So he could open up the year as an extremely, huge tight end that you really want on your roster, and he could kind of carry that momentum into the end of the season. So John brought up that when me and him were talking. Speaking of John bringing stuff up, I want to also point out, John, you bringing up my misuse of commodity that I think I said like 3 or 4 times on last episode. And this is why I need you here, John. This is why I need somebody else on the show for when I say things and I'm kind of just rambling and going on my rants. I need somebody else here to be like, what are you talking about? What did you just say? You said the exact opposite of what you meant. So yes, John, thank you for calling me out on my use of commodity. This is why I love having you here. This is why I miss having somebody else to kind of ping pong off of. But without further ado, because I know the excitement is here and we are both very excited. This is a lot of hype for us. I'm not sure for the viewers. I hope you're kind of experiencing this hype as well now that we're announcing that it's a mock draft episode. But after all this week of us talking about, the draft or pass, would you do this or would you rather do that? Or are you taking him here? Now you get to see it live in action. So tonight we are doing a 12-team mock draft. Me and John are drafting. I am at the 2nd position. John is at the 11th position. And the rest are autos. We have cut down the roster to no kickers, no defense. So it's only position players. So you have your quarterback, your 2 running backs, your 3 wide receivers, a flex, and a tight end. So no bench, just the bare bones structure, the meat, because we don't want to run this show for 45 minutes with us going back and forth. We want to be able to elaborate on our points and give a little bit more draft analysis instead of just building a roster and you guys get to watch us do a mock draft. The structure is what's important. The later on you get to kind of take your flyers and whatnot, but these structures are important. So without further ado, John Landry, are you ready to mock draft?
I think I am ready. Let's do this.
Let's do this. All right, I am going at the 102, so I would imagine that Christian McCaffrey goes first, and I end up with Jonathan Taylor, and that is exactly what has happened. So, Jonathan Taylor coming to me. Let's go. I get JT at 102. Yeah. So, very, very excited that McCaffrey went at 101, so I got scooped up with Jonathan Taylor at 102. Very unlikely that happens in your own home leagues, but for the autos, it seems to happen a lot. So it's going to be a toss-up between Jonathan Taylor and you getting Christian McCaffrey. Now, if I'm not getting Jonathan Taylor there, which is most likely what's going to happen if you're somewhere at 102, I'm looking immediately at Derrick Henry or Austin Eckler. Those are my next 2 picks. When I'm that high up in the draft, I do want to take a running back. If I'm at the top 4, I'm more than likely going to take a running back. And even at 5, I'm going to strongly consider it compared on who got dropped to me. But if I was at the 102 and I didn't get Jonathan Taylor, I'd be staring at Derrick Henry or Austin Eckler, and I would likely take Derrick Henry there because I do think that he's going to get a ton of targets, a ton of usage this year, and they're basically going to run him into the ground. So, let's see. Moving on, John, we got Justin Jefferson, Dalvin Cook, Cooper Kupp, Austin Eckler, Najee Harris, Joe Mixon going at the 109, Jamar Chase going at the 110, and John Landry, you are on the clock at the 111 and at the turn of the 202.
So internally, I've made my decision. I know who I want, but I'm going to explain why I've made that decision. Running backs pool is a little thin this year, but the tier has already dropped. So whether I pick a running back now or in the next round, I'm going to have the same tier of running back. So I want to get a little bit of a positional advantage and draft the wide receiver from the highest passing attempt team in the league. So with my first pick of the first round, I'm going to draft Stephon Diggs. See, Devontae Adams went next, Nick Chubb went next, and now here's the fun part, because there's a lot of good talent on the board, and it's a long way until my next pick. So I want to take a little experiment and see what it's going to be like to draft Travis Kelsey. I am typically not one to draft a tight end so early. tight ends or quarterbacks. I like to stack the positional players first before I get quarterback and tight end. But I'm in a situation here to kind of experiment to show what it might be like, what my team structure will look like if I draft Kelsey. So, second pick, second round, Travis Kelsey.
See, and this is the diamonds. This is the diamonds that Fantasy Daily gives you. It says we're telling you don't draft Travis Kelsey so high, but if you were to take that chance, if you're going to take that chance, this is what your team might look like. And also, John, I would imagine that as he goes on, he's the stat dungeon guy. He knows how to do this. This is what he does all day. This is his 733rd mock draft today alone. So what he's going to do as well on the back end is when you do take this, he's going to show you how to construct that roster later on to make sure that you're not left with holes. So I'm very excited that you did that, John. So selfless, so humble. You are a rock star, my friend. Alvin Kamara, Tyreek Hill, Mark Andrews, DeAndre Swift, CeeDee Lamb going at the 207. So that team's got Cooper Kupp and CeeDee Lamb. How crazy is that? Josh Allen going way too early at the 208. Then Aaron Jones, Saquon Barkley, and it is back to me at the 211. Now, me personally, I'm sitting here with a lot of options. I don't care for tight end anymore because Kelsey and Andrews are off the board. So now I don't care for tight end until 5th, 6th round. I don't care about them at all. I'm looking purely now at stacking my running backs or my wide receivers. So what I'm going to do is I'm looking at the team in front of me. Okay, they have one wide running back, so they're probably looking at the same thing unless they draft 2 wide receivers. So I imagine they're at least going to take 1. So I'm staring at 2 running backs that I like in Ezekiel Elliott and James Conner. And I do really want to stack my running backs very early in this year's drafts because I do believe that I can get a lot more wide receiver talent later on. I'm very confident in my ability to draft wide receivers. I'm very confident in the draft pool later on, so I'm kind of looking at running back. But the difference is I'm staring at Deebo Samuel, Mike Evans, A.J. Brown, Keenan Allen. I'm going to kind of bump A.J. Brown out of there, but I'm really looking at Deebo Samuel, Mike Evans, and Keenan Allen. And I'm going to have to go with the Tom Brady target and Mike Evans and get my guy. I do not want Mike Evans to follow me. If, Zeke and James Conner both go in the next 2 picks, I'll be sad, but I don't believe that will happen. So I can forgive myself if one of those 2 go, but I wouldn't be able to forgive myself if Mike Evans gets taken. So I do want Mike Evans. Going to draft him now and stack him with my Jonathan Taylor. So let's see, A.J. Brown goes, Keenan Allen goes. So he elected to go the double wide receiver there. So Deebo Samuel gets to fall to somebody else. I would, kind of entertain the idea here if you like having wide receiver, but I do believe that this year you're going to want the running backs early. And I'm going to go here with somebody who I think is going to be consistent a lot more in the touchdowns and in the workload. And that's going to be James Conner. So it's kind of odd for me to take Zeke over James Conner. I'm slowly rising higher and higher on Conner every single day. So if we did this mock draft a week ago, I probably would have taken Zeke every single time, but I'm becoming a huge fan of Conner with everything that's going on in Arizona with the skill position players over there. So really high on Conner. I'm drafting him with my 302, and now I have Jonathan Taylor and James Conner with Mike Evans, and I get to kind of start staring at wide receivers and running backs, wide receivers, and then plan out where I'm going to take my tight end. So it moves on to Deebo Samuel, Javonte Williams, Kyle Pitts, Leonard Fournette, Ezekiel Elliott, David Montgomery, Deontay Johnson, Darren Waller, and now John is back with the Stephon Diggs and Travis Kelsey stacked from the 111 and the 202.
So, a lot of running backs just went off. So we just lost another tier of running back. You could argue that Cam could be up there. I'm a little iffy on his injury. They say that, the coach was saying that he's got 2 running backs, so I'm wondering if they're going to committee that up. So I don't know if I'm going to draft the running back right here. Let's look at some receivers. I got T. Higgins, Terry McLaurin, Jalen Waddle, Michael Pittman. Those are excellent options. I don't know about McLaurin. I'm not feeling Washington. So I think I'm going to take the turn. Let a couple running backs go off. Maybe they draft 2. Maybe they don't. I'm going to take another receiver, and I'm going to pick Michael Pittman. I want to trust Matt Ryan. I've always been a fan of Matt Ryan. Michael Pittman now has a quarterback. He's not Carson Wentz, so I'm going to take that really high upside and go with Michael Pittman. So after that, Herbert went off. That's That's a QB I was referencing when I was mentioning Josh Allen. He barely finished under Allen, uh, and still, a spot lower, so a little better. Jalen Waddle went after that, so we're at the point where I might want to take my running back now. It's another tier that's going to drop real soon. I know I wasn't really high on him, but been looking more into it. I want to take a nice big chance. You know what? I'm looking at ETN, but I'm also looking at Josh Jacobs. But I'm still going to go ETN. ETN got that compatibility with T-Law. Good pass catcher. Robinson's still around. I'm still kind of curious if he's going to take it. But I'm going to go against my own word and take ETN.
Yeah, I like the pick there. I think me personally, I was kind of on the side of the same thing of do I want to take the Cam Akers chance or do I want to take the Travis Etienne chance? So I don't hate John's approach there, taking Travis Etienne. I think he's going to be super effective, and as you can see, Cam Akers goes off the board immediately after, followed by Patrick Mahomes, Breece Hall, who's being overdrafted, T. Higgins, DJ Moore, Terry McLaurin, George Kittle, DK Metcalf, and now it rolls back to me. And I'm sitting in a very comfortable position because I have two running backs. The running back pool is starting to deplete. I'm staring at Antonio Gibson and Josh Jacobs, who I do like. I could put them in my flex. I could be strong at running back. So if that's something that, you're really, kind of dependent on, I know a lot of people out there, they really like to have more running backs because they never want to be without one. So I could understand, okay, there's more wide receivers in the waiver wire that I can get later on in the year compared to running backs. So if you're staring at this situation, I don't hate the idea of taking Antonio Gibson and Josh Jacobs. On the other hand, I am very confident in the two running backs that I took. So now I want to start bolstering up my wide receivers with studs who I think are going to absolutely be dominant this year with targets and touchdown potential and yardage. So for that, I'm going to go to Courtland Sutton, who I actually want to point out is finally back-to-back with Jerry Jeudy, just about 50 and 52. They're off by one. But they're finally back-to-back in rankings, where all offseason they weren't anywhere else except where in my wide receiver rankings they were back-to-back, and I had Courtland Sutton one spot above Jerry Jeudy. So, and that was basically because we don't know yet. But I do believe in the ability of Courtland Sutton being the number one wide receiver in comparison to Jerry Jeudy with Russell Wilson. So I'm going with Russell Wilson's new Tyler Lockett and Courtland Sutton. And I'm very, very confident with him as my wide receiver too, especially when I'm staring at Derrick Henry and James Conner as my running backs. Josh Jacobs, Lamar Jackson go off the board there, sending me up for a nice spot where I still have a ton of wide receivers that I can draft. I'm going to take a peek back at running back real quick, and I see that Gibson is still there, but I cannot justify taking Gibson over a wide receiver or a tight end because now we are in that 5th round spot. So this is where I kind of wanted to segue into my tight end theory that once I have wide receivers that I'm confident in, my Courtland Suttons, my Mike Evans, and I have running backs, now I can entertain the idea of tight end. And look who fell just to me. My favorite tight end of the draft, Dalton Schultz, falls right into my lap at pick 59, or pick 502, I'm sorry. His ADP was 59. So he falls right into my lap, and I feel very, very good about my team structure, and I can still play the same exact game of I get to bolster my wide receivers and running backs, and I feel very confident in what I am walking away with already. So Gibson goes, then Burrow, Marquise Brown, J.K. Dobbins, Jeudy, Mike Williams, Cooper, Elijah Mitchell, rolls on back to John, who's looking at Stephon Diggs, Michael Pittman, Travis Kelsey, and Travis Etienne.
So I'm already pretty established at wide receiver. I could even wait another 2 rounds and get a wide receiver that would be fairly well to be considered a wide receiver 3. I think I still want to draft a running back. I know Clyde Edwards-Helaire is on the board. I got A.J. Dillon, got Miles Sanders. I'm going to pass on Miles Sanders. Damian Harris, I'm going to pass on Harris. I think he's being phased out. Ramondre seems to be getting phased in. So I definitely want to take what I think is going to be a heavy workload because of the recent acquisition trade or however it went down. So I want to take right here A.J. Dillon. He's definitely going to absorb quite a bit of workload that Adams lost. A lot of people don't realize it, but he had over 1,000 yards last year, which is huge when you're talking about running backs. And God forbid Aaron Jones goes down, he's going to be a top 5 running back. So not exactly happy about my running back 2 being a literal running back 2, but I know that there's still another running back or 2 on the board that could be subbed in easily as a running back 2. And what I'm going to do is draft that person right now. I'm going to go down the rankings a little bit, and I'm going to take Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt is the pass-catching back for the Browns. Browns are going to have a questionable quarterback likely at first, so it means lots of dump-offs. So that's why I decided to pick Hunt. If Chubb ever goes down, Hunt's going to easily be a top running back too. So never hoping on injury, but that's the name of the game.
Yeah, and I like the strategy. I'm really, and like we said, this is kind of a situation where you're going to find a way that you can reconstruct yourself because of how confident you are in what you drafted at the beginning with Stephon Diggs, Travis Kelsey, Michael Pittman. Now you have the ability to go 3 running backs, and then later on you can trust yourself. Trust what comes in the draft with wide receivers because there's going to be plenty. You know what's coming. You know what you're going to be able to draft in there. So don't reach up to make sure that you have wide receivers immediately. Reach up for the players that you know you want, like Kareem Hunt, that are going to give you those consistencies in those positions that you might not have been able to grab earlier on because you drafted somebody like Travis Kelsey. So nice job, John. You're showing them how not to do it while showing them how to do it if they do get into that situation. Loving John's draft so far. Kyler Murray goes after that. Chris Godwin, Allen Robinson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Miles Sanders, Brandon Cooks going in the 6th round, Darnell Mooney going in the 6th round, Adam Thielen going in the 6th round. So all 3 guys that were on our wide receiver show go back to back to back. And now it falls to me, and I'm staring at 2 wide receivers, 2 running backs, and a tight end. So I'm sitting pretty. And I can kind of look wherever I want now. Let me take a look at quarterbacks. My man Jalen Hurts is sitting there, and I like Jalen Hurts so much this year, but I like so many other quarterbacks later on, so I cannot be looking at that. I am full on tight end. I couldn't have another bite because I love that I got Dalton Schultz. And now I'm really staring at the wide receivers that are left. And what I'm staring at are a lot of wide receivers that I really don't believe in. A lot of players that I'm kind of iffy about. You know what I mean? So I'm looking at what players do I really feel confident in because now I have the ability with the team structure that I have with Jonathan Taylor, James Conner, Mike Evans, Cortland Sutton, Dalton Schultz. I have the confidence and the ability to reach up and grab the player I want. So that is what I will be doing here. I will be reaching up probably about, 2 or 3 rounds? About 2 or 3 rounds here. And I'm going to take a running back that I do believe is going to be in the 6th or 7th round once draft season hits. And that is Rashad Penny. So I get another running back to go into my flex spot way before I get my 3rd wide receiver, but I am stacked at running back, I believe. I believe I have 3 running back ones that I can be confident in, so now I can kind of just focus on wide receiver and hang out there and then get a quarterback later on. So I'm very confident in my team structure. I really like what I see, and all I missed out on are Damian Harris and Juju Smith-Schuster. Don't feel bad about that at all because I love Rashad Penny's upside. So now I'm looking at the upside of players that are still over here, and I really want the upside of a wide receiver 1. So I'm going to start reaching up a little bit for the players that I want. I'm going to stop paying attention to ADP. I really like Hunter Renfrow, but I really don't. It's not going to happen for the wide receiver 1. So I'm going to take a chance here. I'm going to reach way down where I shouldn't be reaching down, and I'm going to grab Allen Lazard. I do believe he has probably the best chance to be Aaron Rodgers number 1, and as much as I hate Aaron Rodgers as a fantasy quarterback, I do believe he's still going to throw at least 25 touchdowns, so where are they going to go? So Russell Wilson, Gabe Davis, Ken Walker, Jalen Hurts, Dallas Goedert, Michael Thomas, DeAndre Hopkins, Drake London, and now it is back to John, who is presumably looking for some wide receiver.
There's still a few good quarterbacks I'd be willing to draft, like Stafford, Derek Carr, and then the end of the draft, Matt Ryan. So I don't need the quarterback. So with the limited team that we have now, wide receiver is the obvious option. So I want to also pick a wide receiver 1 for a team. The unfortunate part about it is that it's arguable how much these people will get the workload. So I'm looking at people like Rashad Bateman, who would be next up for ADP. Looking down a little bit, Robert Woods, he was hurt, came back. I believe he's practicing, should be available for week 1. We got Kadarius Toney, who likely I wouldn't grab that far down, so I'll keep it up a little bit, but I'll go with Rashad Bateman. He's a clear-cut wide receiver 1 for the Ravens. I know they like to run, but they've been working on the passing game for Lamar Jackson, so I'm going to take Rashad Bateman. It's my wide receiver 3. Hunter Renfrow up next, Devontae Smith, and now we're left with quarterback. So I'll just grab the guy I want, Derek Carr. I think he's going to have a stellar season now that he has Devontae Adams. He already had 2 other great receiving options, so there's no reason not to grab Derek Carr.
Absolutely, and I love John's team structure. Zach Ertz going off the board, Dak Prescott, Brady, Dawson Knox, Cordero Patterson, Tony Pollard, Freiermuth, and now it is back to me, and I can choose here. This is probably, like we said, we're going to take quarterback just for the draft structure, but this is where you're still building, so we would be taking players such as, Elijah Moore, Tyler Lockett, Brandon Ayuk, Robert Woods, Chase Claypool still on the board, Chase Edmonds, Melvin Gordon is still there, so there's a lot of good players still on here, but just for team structure's sake, I'm going to go ahead and draft myself some Matt Stafford, put him on my team, and make myself a nice, good, little, neat package for this. So I feel very good in the squad that I got. I feel very confident in this. We can't have bad drafts here on Fantasy Daily. We can't, because we do the work, we do the hard work, the prep going into it to make sure that we're going to be fantasy champions again this year. So my team structure that we're looking at is Matt Stafford, Jonathan Taylor, and James Conner at running back with... I got Rashad Penny at my flex, which I feel very good about. Then my wide receivers are Mike Evans, Cortland Sutton, Alan Lazard, which I feel are his PPR heaven. I feel like there's a ton of targets on my team. And then I got Dalton Schultz hanging out at tight end. Feel very, very good about the bones of that team. That is a playoff push team right there, it looks. John, tell me what you got on your team.
Derek Carr, quarterback. My running backs will be Travis Etienne and A.J. Dillon. And then in the flex would be Kareem Hunt. And my receivers, Stephon Diggs, Michael Pittman, Rashad Bateman. And then the positional leader, Travis Kelsey. My receivers, good. Let it be known, picking that tight end, not knowing that tight end, Kelsey, would fall to me in the second, having picked wide receiver first, definitely cut my strength at running back. But PPR league, I definitely grabbed PPR monsters, so hopefully I can balance that out.
Right, and that's beautiful. That's some analysis you can only get when you're stuffed in a stat dungeon and you get, drifting off into the stratosphere there every day, where you can see something like this. Drafting Travis Kelsey too early can hurt you, but there are ways out of it. There are always ways out of it. There are always ways to win, especially when you tune into Fantasy Daily. And that, my friends, is our show. Thank you so much for tuning in again tonight. John Landry, thank you so much for being back with us. It is always good to have you. It is always good to have you folks here with us. We will be back again soon. I'm not sure if we'll be able to get a show here on Sunday, but Monday for sure. And we'll be rolling right on through the week because it is Fantasy Daily. We are making our way to football season. So everybody, thank you so much for joining. Go to bed early, drink plenty of water, all that good stuff. I need to think of a better sign off. Good night.